The attention of the room. Moment, just let me know when you're good to go. So Cheryl, do you hear me okay? Teresa, you okay? All right, sound check is good. We will start in a couple minutes. Thank you. To call the meeting to order at 1 p.m. And thanks to everybody for coming in today. Cheryl and Director Weatherhead online. Director Newell has sent his regrets. I do not see Director Davidoff online. And I do not see Director Tierney in the room. So unless that changes, we will carry forward. I would like to start with, we acknowledge and respect Indigenous peoples within whose lands we are meeting today. And would take a motion to adopt the agenda. So second, all in favor? One line is good. And we will now move to the receipt of the minutes. Do we have any errors or omissions resulting from the minutes of the last meeting to which I was not here to attend? I'm looking around the room. I'm not seeing anything. Can I get a motion? Do we motion to accept the minutes? Or we just accept them as we just accept them that they have been received. All right. So then we will now move into 6.1, updates on sustainability service projects and areas of activity. I presume Paris, you will lead that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. I've noted in the staff update There are highlights in this meeting that are noted in the October's highlights. And then looking ahead, we plan to continue our work on the Goat Watershed Water Sustainability Planning. There's the Rural Mobility Working Group, and then also consider the next steps of the natural asset management and the S105 budget finalization. That's all for the future. Speaking more to updates from the activity over the last months since our meeting in July. We've had significant engagement in the Goat River Watershed Project. We've had a meeting with the Slocan Lake and River Partnership. We completed the project on the Weimar Watershed Quartz Creek Natural Asset Management Plan, and that's on the agenda for the board's receipt. We continue to prepare and work on business cases related to the climate action strategy. We haven't met on the Rural Invasive Species Working Group, but there's a meeting planned. And then Alex will provide an update on the Rural Mobility Community Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Paris. Looking to the room, any questions for Paris on her report? I'm seeing none. My question to you, Paris, would be in terms of the business cases, how is that working, and when are we to expect some of those business cases?
Thank you, through the chair. They are emerging in different ways, and so at the December board meeting, the December board meeting, we'll see renewed business case requests or renewed requests in business case form for the Central Kootenay Food Policy Council and also for the CKIS Advisory Committee. We'll also see a new project that's being brought forward by the Central Kootenay Food Council. They dropped the word policy to look at food recovery, which is part of the climate action ideas. And then also what's happening at the staff level is that with the receipt of the new emissions inventory that was received in July, this summer, we're looking at that has provided new modeling for us understanding how our current activities are actually forming the future of our emissions. And so we'll be looking at how to adapt that and bring forward to the board proposals for new business cases, but we don't anticipate that until this month.
Director Watson.
Thank you. Just curious where REAP is landing these days. I think we requested an update on that program a while ago. Is it still under CSLAC, but funded GA? Where does that land, and what's the update, or when will we get it?
Staff?
Through the chair. Great question. Yes, you did request an update, and that request is standing. There's a new REAP coming. It's going through a rebranding process, and there's also funding that's been committed by FCM for that new rebranding process, and that hasn't finalized yet, and so it hasn't been able to be made public. So that once we anticipate, and in the monthly updates that we receive, so working with staff from City of Nelson who are delivering the contract, we continuously ask them for when can we bring this to the board. They anticipate that they hope to launch it publicly, but in January, and so that they hope to come soon in December or January to share the newly designed program with the board.
Supplemental?
Yes, you may.
So I look forward to that, but I'm actually looking for, through the chair, the updates for the past 2 years and how the program's working, not what is yet to come.
And thank you, through the chair, and those will be included as well in that update.
And just for the benefit of those who don't know, REAP is the acronym for?
The Regional Energy Efficiency Program.
Thank you.
And yes, it does. So it doesn't sit under CSLAC anymore. It sits under S100 and reports directly to the board.
Okay. Final question on that one. The outstanding question was the issues around rural delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one I am anxious to get an update on because it has been about 2 years since we've had it.
Yeah.
I did attempt using the program, and I'll withhold my comments at this time.
All right, anything further? Director Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions through the chair to staff, if I may. The Weimar Watershed Natural Asset Management Plan has been complete. And the first question is, it says, final report received. Is that public now? Can it be released? Like, in other words, has the Weimar Watershed Society seen it? Or, because I know they have a meeting planned with APCO, and I think this is part of the topic. Anyway, thank you. My second question has to go with next steps. What's the methodology for the next steps? And when?
So I didn't hear the answer to the first question. Is that officially released?
Thank you. Through the chair. Yes, it's on the agenda. And so it has been received by CSLAC. It is a public document. It can be shared. It has been shared, I believe, with the project partners, which was the Watershed Society. But yes, I can confirm that. And next steps is our plan is to bring a report to CSLAC for December to consider next steps. At this time, because of we wanted the opportunity for CSLAC to receive the report first and have an opportunity to digest it, and then we would bring the discussion of next steps.
Very good, very good.
All right. Anything further? Thank you, Paris. This is for information, this update. I will move along to 7.2, and that is back to Weimar Watershed and the Natural Asset Management Plan, to which we were just speaking to. We're still on 7.1? Oh, we need to go to 7.1. We were at 6.1. Okay. That's kind of really interesting how this works. Numerical order like that. Old business, 7.1. For discussion, rural mobility, community advisory committee progress update and funding requests. I'm looking at Alex, but I will equally look at Paris as well.
So would you like to start?
Yeah, just open to questions from the board or from the committee.
Okay, there is a funding request on this. There's an awful lot of information that goes with this. You've got two sets of minutes that really don't have any given direction within the minutes. You have quite a report that you've gone through with a number of potential projects. This would be the first time, I think, that we are asked to comment on those projects. Everything up to this point has been for information only. So I'll start with Director Jackman.
Oh, thank you. Easy question first, I guess, through the chair. So the $40,000 isn't going to be spent this month, next month. That would be for fiscal year 2026 and beyond. Okay, so given that, this is a little bit of maybe cart before the horse. I don't like to see here's 40,000, go ahead and spend it before we have a budget for the whole year. You know, generally motions along this line would be that the 40K be allocated within the draft 2026 budget. So cart before the horse, if we ask for the 10,000 to sort of coordinate spending the 40, that doesn't make a lot of sense. If the board looks at the 2026 budget and says, nope, there's not a lot of LG cap money left, or we spend it on something else, then the 10 would not produce anything without the 40. So what's the absolute latest date to ask for the 10 to have a sanction applying for the $10,000 grant? Because it doesn't make sense to take that money, do the work if there's no money to implement that being the 40. What's the latest date that we could actually make a decision? And if it's not today, it's not till draft budget January, February, then all of this should be in the form of a draft entry into the 2026 budget. Can this wait?
Through the chair. Yes, we can wait.
So I think this should be referred, the request should be referred to the budget when we see all the other asks of LG cap and or ways we can use it. Maybe it'll be in front of the projects we're gonna hear about in December. Maybe it'll be for something else that has better results.
Can I take Director Watson?
So, well, yeah, I'm not,
Yep. I understand.
not a formal
Director
motion
Watson?
refer, yeah.
So,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Staff, you wanted to respond?
Thank you.
I thought you did.
Just additional. Thank you, through the chair. So there's just, in terms of procedure, because the Rural Mobility Working Group is a project of CSLAC, the request is coming at CSLAC. LG Cap is a fund that's held at the board, and as noted in the report, a full, the additional request that's coming, for LGCAP funding is coming in November. And so then there will be a fulsome budget for LGCAP and how, staff are proposing that the remainder be spent. At that time, we could also include this item, but we wanted to give the committee an opportunity to discuss this request and also make a recommendation to the board without presuming, one, the committee's position on it, nor bring this item to the board for discussion.
Supplemental then based on that. So it's premature to make a recommendation to the board. I think staff can make that as part of their overall budget submission. And back to the $10,000, that would be applying for that 10,000 right now, which will involve staff time. So does it make any sense to have 10,000 in hand of that application if there's no $40,000 to implement any of it? Should we just simply wait until we know a little more about the board's intention on the entire budget?
Thank you.
So noted. Director Watson?
So a couple of just governance questions first. As a committee, I mean, it's a committee of CFLAC, the RMAC, but all committees are of the board. So I'm curious where their minutes are and how they're being reported on. That's my first question.
So, respectfully through the chair, so we submitted the meeting notes for the 2 previous meetings. And then just to speak to Gary's question, Director Jackman, I think you're referring to the $10,000 outside of the 40, is that right? Yeah, so last year we received 5,000 from LGCAP.
It's the Tamworth funding. Is it?
Oh,
Clarity?
Thank you. Through the chair, Director Jackman, you're talking about the 2 recommendations that are being discussed in this report. The 10,000, which is proposed as a coordination of the projects that the 40,000 would support. Is that correct? Yes.
Oh.
And the question is that Director Jackman's asking is, does it make sense to apply for 10,000 of coordination if we don't have any project funding to support it?
sorry, I thought it was the other piece of LGCAP. And back to your question, did that answer
Where were they received?
Here.
here?
At CFLAC?
Yeah.
Okay, it's helpful if they're attached to this because that was 2 months ago. So it helps see, okay, so the committee made these recommendations, just helpful. I have further questions.
Okay, just a clarity on that. I have reviewed those minutes from the last meeting. There was no recommendations made. There was a collection of roundtable discussion on probably those things that resonated with the group, their wish list, if you will. So there was no, within those minutes, there was no recommendations to the board. I just want to, am I incorrect in that?
Can I clarify, governance-wise, an advisory committee doesn't make recommendations to the board. And so that's why reading their minutes are more like notes. It's like our water advisory committee minutes,
Mhm.
but I would be looking for how is what we're asking for related to what they discuss, not a direct recommendation, because they don't make recommendations to the board
Okay.
in that function.
And further from my understanding, and if you'll allow me to, is then you will take what you distilled as the top 7 projects based on those conversations around that table, correct?
Mhm.
And that's what we're looking at in regards to today. And part of the funding request is for one or more of those. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I have further.
Okay, did you want to respond to that first, Paris?
I just, through the chair, I just wanted to fill it out a little bit more that Alex did bring when those projects were first being presented. They were brought to the committee to CSLAC for review and consideration. So that happened in the spring of this year. So, and there's been, since in July, there was another update. And so this is now the 3rd update on the projects that were presented in the spring.
Okay, brought forward as for information.
No, I believe there was a recommendation.
No, not without what I read.
No, a recommendation to CSLAC to receive the projects as is.
So respectfully through the chair, in the past update, we just brought forward meeting minutes for information. Prior to that, we brought a list of projects, and after discussing them here, we brought them to the RMWG or RMCAC for prioritization. process, and then we brought that back just for information.
That's my understanding. Yeah. The first set of discussion or summary of the projects was and then there's a timeline, a timetable that went along with it. There was a lot of outstanding information that we were still trying to put together. I'll just remind you that in the bylaw 3005, I think it is, one of the elements in there is to prepare business cases. So that which we have today, there is no business case per se. So that's going to be my input to this. And I guess the question would be is, if you believe that your report is a business case, then I would like to know what you understand the framework of a business case is. So that is my comments on that, and I'll go to Director Watson.
Okay, so to, we kind of went all over the place there, bear with me for a minute to stay on track. I would note that because we get a summary of what we're doing and the actions, that's a helpful place to track what we were just verbally tracking. So I just went back to see an RMAX not on that list. And so it might just be a good place for what if we give a direction on where it's at. It's kind of CSAC great for that. My actual questions, if I can go back to a thought process here, was I have a lot of questions on the actual projects identified in terms of what are they? Like you give a lot of information. I don't discount that at all. But things like the shared mobility programs of an e-cargo bike share. I don't understand what that means. A bike share in super remote areas, like I'm not quite getting the connection on transportation with that. The shared mobility programs, healthcare transportation, who is administrating that? We're looking at actually implementing software, managing that software. So I like, are we doing that? Is there an external entity doing that? Mosaic mapping, I don't know what that means. Could be awesome. Again, don't know what that means. How does it integrate in our GIS system? Is there data we're collecting that then the public can access? Safe cycling education, I do still have that allocated in my community development for Castle and Area D. So if that's still on the list, that's great. Not a huge priority because we actually have quite a few biking organizations that do a lot of that work. The active advisory team. So there's just within each of those, I think I'm cautious over the business case model just to be like, let's not create a whole other project to get to a project, but I do get your point. The things I need in that business case is who's administrating it, what's in-house, what's out-house, what's the GIS connection, and you've named kind of who's benefiting from this, but because I don't understand how the programs work, I'm not totally understanding how it lands on the ground. So those are my outstanding questions to understand. I would agree that when it comes to the 40,000 for local government action climate funding, because that is our only pot and it is limited at this time. We've got 3 years in one shot. It is important to know what else are we going to need to do with that. We know what's coming with EDMA, and that's always going to be my top priority because those are not optional. So these ones that are optional, I need to put up against emergency disaster mitigation stuff we have to do. My final note is I do want to acknowledge that I hope we do get different greenhouse gas metrics because I think they included things, that's not your project, but it leads to it. They included things that we can't really control. I use that word in terms of governance and management, not in like, we're going to control you method. But it did indicate that our transportation is the highest area, so it makes sense to connect it. So I support it from a theoretical perspective, but the tangibles about how that's landing on the ground is where I'm still missing a lot of those pieces. Although we provide a lot of info, I hate to say there's still more I need, but those are the gaps. So hopefully it helps you fine tune it to understand.
All right, Dan would like to reply, and I will touch on the business case. Those are the elements that need to be built into the business case that you just referred to, and there's a few more. And without the basic understanding of what those elements need to be, we're going to continue to have these incomplete conversations. So that's why I just throw in, from my world, that's what a business case is. So, but Dan, please go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. We work on the reports as a team, so the whole team takes responsibility for the amount of detail that is or is not there. So it's helpful to hear the feedback. We ride a line of how much information to give the board. or the committee for that matter in this case, where sometimes it's too much information and we recognize that you have a lot of reading to do. I'm hearing here that this is not enough information, so there were a few attachments that were provided that gave more detail to each of the projects. Those may not have been enough. And hearing that there are certain parts of the business case that weren't addressed that you would like to see as part of this, or as part of these reports, heard. Like what heard, we heard you.
We will, H-U-R-T, hurt.
Heard.
Can I supplemental to that?
Yes, you may. Please go ahead.
And I
Yeah,
think
and then Leah, you're next.
we've talked about this at the board level. I think we provide a lot of information, but I think the cautionary note, which is really subjective to how you perceive it, is we can provide a lot of information that is very high level to more of like a nice statement to make, not the actual functional aspect. And that's where I feel we tend to miss the mark a little bit. Who owns the software? Who's managing it? How does this integrate in GIS? That's really tangible info. So I find that you do provide a lot, but often I'm still looking because you've written a beautiful story and yet I'm not getting the details. So I don't know if that's helpful. It's really.
Through the chair, yes, we ride that line, so I appreciate it. And if I may, just one last piece, just around LG cap funding and emergency management. Just reminding the committee that part of the funding that the board decided to allocate, and I'm forgetting the percentage now, I just have the dollar figure, which was $75,000 of LG cap funding that's specifically reserved for emergency management. We've earmarked that potentially for supplemental to the HRVA if we do get invited to the application process from EOI for DRIP. But there is that 75,000 that is specifically earmarked, that is separate from whatever would be allocated, or whatever the committee or the board would be allocating for LGCAP towards these projects.
All right, anything further?
I'll just say 75 is a drop in the bucket for what I know it's gonna cost. So I do
Oh,
know
yeah.
that, and that's great. Not to discount it. We don't get enough out there.
Director Main.
Thank you. So, I'll display my ignorance here. Exactly what do we look for in a business case analysis? I want an outline, just like we have an outline for staff reports, so that we don't run into this, well, you're missing this or you're missing that. I have never seen an actual one-pager that says, this is what we want in a business case analysis. It might have happened in the year that I was off the board, or I might just have spaced out and missed it.
No, that's a fair question. Please go ahead.
So our board reports that are the new board report template, it's supposed to be that business case. So we have different templates for different things, but the intent of that report is to outline why staff are making those recommendations, making the recommendation. So with that comes a lot of other added information, but it starts with that report specifically.
And if I could just add through the chair.
Paris, please.
The business case that we were trying to make in this committee report was a business case for using the funding or not using the funding. It wasn't specific to the projects. The attachment provided more detail about the two projects that are being proposed to fund in this case. So we're happy to bring back more information about the projects that are being proposed.
And I think it's fair that maybe to Director Main's question, what does that framework typically look like? So it's no surprise. I come from a world of working in business cases all the time, and I've got it pulled up in front of me. And to Director Watson's point of view, there are elements she pointed out that are part of a typical business case. And without that information, how can you make really effective, good decisions? I wouldn't worry about the size of it. I mean, we got this, we're served with all these agenda, and the work that goes along with the agenda is only days in advance, but we managed to get through. And but without the appropriate and the real information that's necessary, it's just really hard for us to make these decisions without referral, to be able to give us more time. Director Tierney, thank you. So Anybody further? Looking up at the screen on TV, nobody there?
Sure.
Oh, Director Jackman, please.
So, the second and a half time, I had a lot of back for it. So I did open, C-Slide from, April, and so there is detail. And some of it I understood, and some of it I have to understand. So there's a mobility mapping mosaic, which is talks about looking at partial databases. There's a one-page outline of this project, who the partners are, what the tasks are, trying to understand what databases we have, publicize the results. Things that kind of caught my attention was an online map and database with open sourcing for residents, and then looking into how to develop that. Some kind of grants to support an internet application. So some of this was described, and this isn't new to me because, say, if my daughter wants to go hunting with her boyfriend, there are wonderful applications to show where all the zones are, everything is, and show a bunch of trails and places you can go and be. Or if you want to go riding a bike, a trail bike, mountain bike, whatever, there's all kinds of maps you can go and source it already as well. It tells you all these trails. I mean, there were comments about, well, what are the risks about, getting people on some trail or something that's dangerous. There's tons of stuff about backcountry now. If you're in the backcountry, you know about it. Once in a while, you go up there and, hey, there's a map. It's exactly where you are. There's GPS coordinates. You take a picture and make sure that you know that you're not lost, provided you have connectivity. So when I read this about sort of this mapping mosaic, it's not really new, and I don't know what we would want to develop something. The only stuff that came to mind is in Director Tierney's area, is little stretches of bike paths that I know he uses with an e-bike that maybe people don't know about, that we could fill in the gaps close to home, not in the backcountry, not big stuff, just little sections. In Crawford Bay, you can cut across the edge of the golf course, get from the store to the park, the parks. And there's little back roads and stuff. To me, that's of value. And that's what I sort of understood, this would fill in a whole pile of little gaps and maps. You go to town in Creston, you can walk all over the place. And you know, when you're on a public right of way, even if it's in behind the building lumber yards and stuff in the bush almost, it's a public right of way where Creston town owned property. So there's lots of information that we could have something attached to. And then there's something also on that other one, the shared mobility software, this kind of overlaps. But as I say, the software exists. I don't use an iPhone. If you walk around with somebody with an iPhone, it's amazing. They'll tell you, hey, here's an open source app, and here's where we are, what the rules are around what we may or may not do. So we don't need to do some of this, we just need to fill in gaps. So I'm not too worried about kind of what you would do, provided you're only going to fill in gaps. I'm worried about we won't have the money to fill in the gaps. If we make an application for 10 grand, and then we say, wow, we are slammed with budgetary requests, and we're not going to fund the 40. So if you go back and read what we saw in April, what we saw in June, I think you'll sort of see the scopes and lots of little tasks and details. Some of it will make sense, some won't. I'm more concerned about it's too early to make a decision or recommendation to the board on a firm 40K carve out from LG Cap. Now, if we can make the application so we have the vision, if nothing else, these don't belong together. These two recommendations aren't a single thing. We have the vision. If you want to go ahead and say, well, let's make the application for the 10K, we might come to the budget decision and say, give it back, no thanks, because we can't afford to do the $40,000 for the project. So anyway, I do appreciate the earlier reports, don't fully understand what an application would look like. It's just, we need to be cautious about predetermining the budget in October when we have no idea what the big picture looks like yet. So I guess as a minimum, these should be divided when we can talk about the application, and if we do or don't act on it some months from now.
Thank you, Director Jackman. And before Paris responds, the points that you raised in terms of examples, what does a mosaic map look like? What is the gaps, opportunities, what they look like? That would be really good to know. That would then give us a better picture as to the function and the purpose of potentially trying to draw lines through and fill in that gap. Paris, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. So just to speak to the 10,000 from application from Tamarack, we see an opportunity to apply it to the project that as it's outlined in the recommendation. If at that stage it's determined that the project, the LG Cap funding needs to move somewhere else and cannot be used here, we can go back to Tamarack and say, we have another idea for this project. Can we evolve this? So and if we can go back to Tamarack and say, we can't use this funding. So, but we don't want to proceed without board direction. If I can take another moment, please.
Sure.
There is, so what we have total for LGCAP funding, and we didn't include this in detail in the report, is that we have 75,000 that was, there was 150,000 that was allocated between planning and between emergency management. And then there's 75,000 that remains for general applications. Staff have done a wide call out to the whole of the RDCK to say, do you have projects that would be eligible for this funding? We've received two, in addition to the work that Alex is doing, we've received two other areas of interest. One is to do programmable thermostats in the resource recovery buildings to reduce the amount that the heating is used so that it's programmable. That's in the works, and because it wasn't ready for consideration, because staff were on holiday, it's being brought forward in November to the board. So, and that's about 20,000. That leaves 15,000 if the 40,000 is allowed here. We have one idea that's developing. We don't know at this stage whether or not, and so we may have another request for the 15,000, but at this stage we can't speak to it. So really, we've been trying to gather ideas. They're great ideas, and there's it's finding that balance between readiness of staff and staff ideas. And again, a reminder that this funding needs to be allocated by March of next year.
Director Watson.
So I want to go back to governance for a minute. Did we ever make appointments to the RMAC committee? Because the board makes those appointments, and I don't recall seeing those. I also noticed in the minutes that there's committee members and then those that were partial members, that you don't have a partial or a full member. So I do want to just flag governance wise. I don't think we ever made those appointments to the RMAC committee, and we technically should be as a board. Specific to the project, I don't know enough about who houses the administrating it. How do we ensure if it's for the public that the public has continued use of it?
Which project? Sorry.
Well, if we wanted, I agree the motion needs to be separated. They're two separate things. They shouldn't be done together. If we wanted to go ahead and support the 10,000, I still have outstanding questions on what is that 10,000 specifically for out of everything that's named here? And if it's specifically to the shared, the data information so people can access that. Again, I want to see either using that money to do a lit review on what's already available, what's missing, and then who's going to fill in that gap, who's hosting it, so it remains available. So I just still have questions if we were to move forward with the 10,000, what are you focusing on with that 10,000? And I'll make one more note. The reason why I raised this is for the appointments to the RMAC committee is I do notice the ones that attended the committee meetings. I did read them. Sorry, it was back in June, so I don't have a memory that goes back that far. That they were a lot of the BC Coalition work, which are members and people of that, which is good. That's important work. In my rural area, I'm facing so many issues with rec sites and trails and access to trails that are used as access points between communities that I don't think would be even aware of by some of those numbers. So there's other areas where we're getting a push pull. And just finally on that 10,000, I just want to frame that if we applied for that, I wouldn't know how to explain what we were applying for. So that's where I'm trying to figure out what it would be focused on.
Thank you. I'm going to allow Dan to explain. So bylaw 3005, and you're going to speak to that specifically to address Director Watson's question.
Through the chair, thank you. Yes, more detailed on is needed for the project. That's great. Within the bylaw for 30, for that part, I'm terrible with the acronym. The Rural Mobility Group, RMAC, the membership for electoral area directors is RDCK electoral area directors are not members of RMAC, which for me would mean that there wouldn't be that appointment component, but may participate in meetings. So there would still be an appointment?
Yes, when you look, sorry, through the chair, when you look at our water services committee, these are committees of the board. The board appoints the members. So it's regardless on our membership. Our advisory committees for water also do not have directors as members. Our APHC were not members. We appoint to those committees of the board.
Even if an external advisory body?
It's still it's our bylaw, it's our committee. So we have to appoint to it.
Okay.
So the bylaw does specifically say that they're not appointed to the board, but they can attend. Is what the
They're
bylaw
never
specifically
appointed
says.
to the board. The Water Services
Or to the
Committee are
committee.
also not appointed to the board. They're committees of the board, and thus the board makes the appointment to the committee to say, you're on that committee, you're on that committee, there you go.
So, and if I may defer to you again, where is the appropriate place to address that, that gap?
Well, it's General Local Government Act that would describe.
How do we take care of that though today?
Well, that would be like the Water Services Committee would be, it's similar, it comes to the board, you make our membership motions, that's how you make those appointments. So any of the applications that Alex would have received or whoever received would have then moved through our appointments, which is usually corporate admin, and they would have ended up on our board agenda to say membership appointments to RMAC. It's also part of transparency to know who are we appointing to these committees.
So that should follow us to the board so we can deal with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll also point out too that this is a public, within the bylaw itself and within the meetings that you've had, a couple things that I've noticed is three members of that committee should be from the rural. And going through the minutes, you can't tell whom is representing the rural and what areas they're from. That should be identified. Secondly, to be aware of when the meeting is, should be at least noted on the calendar, on the RDCK calendar, which it is not, or a notice sent out that you're holding a meeting of such and such a date if you're interested to attend and so on. That's not occurred either. So just wanted to point those two things out. Director Papa.
Not to confuse the issue anymore, but the RMAC that you're talking about, there is a bylaw to establish that committee, is there not?
There is 3005.
And that committee, that bylaw should define how the appointments are done to that committee. I'm in the process of doing a community advisory committee in Area H. There's a bylaw there, and we've asked for people, we have an ad, submit to the director. I, as a director, will in that particular case or whatever, recommend appointments to our community advisory committee. Then who makes the recommendation to the board, the appointments, and that's to the point that Chair Watson was trying to make. The appointment should be done by the board, and the advisory committee makes the recommendation to, I guess, CSLAC in this case, and CSLAC looks at it and makes the recommendation to the board.
Right.
So some similar to that process. I might have the committees wrong.
All right. Thank you for the input on that. This may be a procedural requirement because within the bylaw 3005, it specifically does not have that provision. It basically, if I remember correctly, you had it up. It's 6 members minimum, 3 of which must be rural. To which I've noted that even the attendance, you can't tell whom is representing rural, sort of thing. I'll go to Director Watson.
I think we can just take this offline, that the focus is the application today. I think there's some governance things we need to clean up on the RMAC. They were designed around the same as our advisory committees, which mean they do not make recommendations to the board, but to be appointed to an advisory committee, the board has to make that appointment. So that's the gap, and I'm pretty sure it's in our procedures bylaw that it would identify how appointments are made to committees regardless of what committee it is. But we can follow that up. Mike's not here right now, but I did send Stuart a note saying, can you clarify this?
Great, thank you for that. So we are still on 7.1. There is a resolution that has been put in front of us by staff. Director Papa.
So I'd like to move division.
All right. So then there's 2 parts to that resolution. The first part speaks to applying for the $10,000 from the Community Climate Transitions Innovation Fund from the Tamarack Institute to support the Rural Mobility Community Advisory Committee project, shared mobility programs, healthcare, transportation. And further that if successful, the grant funding be allocated to A108 and so on. I will need,
Do I have a seconder for
I will need a,
Can I just clarify, if you haven't moved the motion, you don't need division, just move the one part of the motion you want, you don't need to do the
I
division.
think that's what.
So I move the first part of the motion.
First part of the motion, seconded by Director Main. So the question I would have to staff is everybody with what's going on and that sort of thing, is everybody eligible? Is there anybody not eligible to vote on this? Everybody here that's in attendance is, correct?
Committees all vote. You don't have corporate vote.
Okay, all right, just want to clear on that. So that is the motion. I will call for all in favor.
Can we have discussion?
Oh, yeah, we should have that too. Let's have a little discussion, some more discussion. Director Watson.
So what would this 10,000 be used for, absent of the 40,000 guarantee?
Directly through the chair, I should have brought it in front of me, but I believe I did lay it out in the.
So, yeah, we can go through, so on page 3, thank you through the chair.
Yes, please.
On page 3, there's an outline of the healthcare transportation. So the shared mobility is one of the areas of work that the Rural Mobility Working Group, or CAC, has taken on. And it's divided into, one is focused on transportation and one is focused on developing a technology to support mobility across the regional district. Alex, jump in and if I go off track. And so on page 3, it outlines specifically the work that Alex is proposing, or the working group is proposing, to advance healthcare transportation. And these are all the small transportation shuttles that happen across the regional district, largely run by community initiatives, largely done by volunteers or exclusively done by volunteers, but there's no intercoordination between them. And so through Alex's survey of work, he's met with all of them and understood that there's a high level of burnout, there's a high level of inefficiency, and in general, there's a need to, or there's an opportunity to provide some level of coordination that could improve efficiency between the network, if only just to come together and say, how do we work together? How can we possibly share resources? Because in many cases, they're also duplicating efforts as well. And so there is an existing organization, so it wouldn't be us taking on this initiative. There's an existing organization called the Kootenay Boundary Community Services Cooperative, or COOP for short, and they're already doing this work of bringing them together. And they're doing it at a low level because they don't have enough funding. And so the $10,000 could be used to support them and to support them in doing more of this collaboration initiative and bringing together and then seeing from there, what is the next step? And from there, applying to CBT as expressed interest. And if we get 10,000 of LGCAP funding, that would also go towards actually providing supports to both the people that use the rides and the drivers that actually drive the rides.
All right, Director Watson.
So I, just going to the budget, the page 3 just lists a bunch of things and all the things that they do. It doesn't actually reference what the 10,000 is used for. When you go down to the actual budget, there's multiple things listed at LGCAP 5, APFC 25. So that's where I'm confused. What are we doing with this 10,000? With your description, Paris, my question is, could the organization already doing this not just apply themselves and amp up what they're doing?
Respectfully through the chair.
Go ahead, Alex.
So we have a number, I think there's 8 different organizations across the region running somewhat similar programs that often overlap. The largest program is through Castlegar Community Services. It's a volunteer driver program, and they work across the West Kootenays. There's also the Aaron Slocan Lakes Community Service Society that runs a medical shuttle. That medical shuttle leaves from the Slocan Valley and it goes to Vernon and Kelowna twice a month. So there's a few different models happening. And when we brought these groups together to talk, there seems to be a lot of overlap in administrative tasks that they face as well as the clientele. And so we think that by running a pilot through the COOP potentially, the COOP works with the Foundry and a number of these different partners already, that we could bring them together and help them access those efficiency improvements.
Supplemental?
So my understanding is then we're hosting the process of them coordinating themselves. That's what this 10,000 would do.
Apologies, I should have printed it, my computer died, but,
If I can just respond, so we're eligible to apply for the funding with Tamarack because we're a member of Tamarack. The COOP is not eligible, and so they would not be able to apply for the funding. So this is funding that's specifically available to us. It's a very simple application. It would only take about 3 to 4 hours. It's not cumbersome from staff time. And we could apply for it, make the funding available, and then pass it on. And so it would just be we would be a flow through to the COOP for them to have access to a relatively easy, accessible 10,000 to advance this work.
Supplemental.
respectfully, through the chair.
Okay, Alex, you may go ahead.
So we have a target budget for this pilot of $100,000, but we wanted to provide options if we don't reach the full target. So in the cost column, you can see the minimum option is for 10, 20.
Can you just reference where you're
Yeah.
referencing this?
So on page 3, there's a proposed budget and funding request table. And so we have some ranges here.
Sorry, that's not what I have on page 3.
Page 3 of the report, it would be, what page of the agenda package?
Page 3 of attachment A.
The other attachments that you're referencing.
The detailed project updates.
Sorry about that, yeah.
7.1, and that is the October update report, page 3.
Attachment.
Yes.
The attachment.
Okay, thank you. 7.1.1 is the attachment on it, page 3. Now I know what you're talking about.
Oh, 7.1.1, thank you, because I was on the wrong report as well.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Alex. It's just helpful to know what we're both looking at.
So there's a range of costs here provided based on a scaled down and a scaled up version of the pilot and what we're able to achieve through these funding applications and others. And so this $10,000 from Tamarack would be split across those 7 components. And then we've requested an additional 20,000 from LGCAP, and those $10,000 portions would go specifically to the low income supports. So item 2 on the project components and the shared systems, which is component 4. So then if those 3 pieces of funding came together, we'd have 30,000 of the target budget, but it still wouldn't be the full budget. We would then have to go to additional funding applications.
Supplemental.
That's my final, I shouldn't say that, but, and then that's helpful to understand. It's still more than the 10,000 we're discussing today, but we're assuming we're getting others, minus the LGCAP conversation. But I did want to refer back to what Para said, is that we're not doing this work. We are a flow through. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Jackman.
Yes, so, as you say, there's some budget detail here, there's some explanation earlier back in April as to sort of what we're trying to do with the money. So this just reinforces to me, this is a little bit of leveraging fund, totally independent of any decision on LGCAP because of the range of possible outcomes and possible other funding sources. For one example, United Way has allocated the East Shore Transportation Society $20,000 to do trial buses to get people to medical appointments. So there's other money. If East Shore is able to get 20 grand, and surely this bigger collaborative can get the balance of money without tapping into LGCAP in advance of our full budget process. So I'm okay for applying for this if there's not the expectation you're gonna get the LGCAP money. That this is leveraging money, get people rolling down a path to find other money. And again, if it's flow through, there won't be a massive staff component, but I do appreciate having Alex and the team because I don't know if Coop ever talks to East Shore or talks to anybody in Creston Valley. So Alex will, because he already has. So I don't mind this idea, provided there's no expectation that LGCAP is gonna follow. This is leveraging a much bigger process, 1/10 of the potential money. And yeah, let's go for this. But if everything else falls apart, you're not gonna backstop with the LGCAP this year. I don't expect 2026. That's gonna be a much tougher sell, I'm sure. So, yeah, I will vote for this discrete first paragraph.
So staff, did you have a response for Director Jackman? His comments are so noted at this table. My comments were going to be in Crescent Valley, we already have the transport health service that is subsidized. And so I didn't see a benefit to this, but as you explained, the opportunity to, and nor did I understand the mobility shareware, the software. But as you have explained, there could be an opportunity to work with our area to enhance or make it more efficient. I don't know. That's just a part of the whole the process is we understand that we have the services are working in Crescent Valley. Whether or not they can take advantage of this remains to be seen. So I'll be kind of curious to see how that plays itself out. Anything further before I call the question? So does everybody understand the motion? Anybody need to have the motion reread?
One clarification.
Please.
So this is not for the app development, this is for the coordinated, okay, because that's the one I still, because I was just noting that, and I think if I'd seen the administration, it would have clarified for me it's a flow through, because that administration, if the goal is 100,000, is significantly low, assuming those organizations have their own administrative fees to cover it. Cool, thanks.
Okay, anything further? All in favor? Any not in favor? Carries. Does this then go through to the board?
Yes.
All right. And the next part of the business is the second part of it. Director Jackman.
I think direction of staff would be to put this into the draft 2026 budget. See what happens.
All right. And I have a seconder.
Well, direction of staff.
We don't need a, so we break up the motion and it's just direction staff. Okay.
And procedural wise, you haven't broken the motion because it was never put on the floor. That's a reformation on our agenda, but when you move one, if you don't move the other, nothing happens.
Okay.
What Jackman's done is just given direction to staff on it. It just,
All right. Thank you for your assistance. Appreciate that. All right. We're going to move to 7.2 for information. That is Weimar Watershed Quartz Creek Natural Asset Management Plan. That is 7.2. It does fall after 7.1.
Better counting this.
Did staff want to start off with anything first before I take any questions? Amy, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if, so on the Quartz Creek Watershed project, I'm wondering if we will be able to, I don't know how much staff were involved in this, but I do really recognize there's a working group in the community. So before it comes back to us with recommendations, is there any requirement on a recommendation from this community to say, please work with the Weimar working group before coming back to recommendations? Is that a part of the action plan? Do you want direction from us to do so?
Looking to staff.
Thank you through the chair. We have been working closely with them through the whole process. They were an active partner. We did a feedback session, a presentation of the draft material to an invited group of lists, an invited group of members. It included Jason Lewis and many others from the Weimar Water System team. They were quite interested, and yeah, ultimately they're very pleased with the results because it affirms their position on the vulnerability, and it just affirms what they already knew. So yes, no direction needed, but it will be included in the next steps.
So currently this is for information and Director Jackman.
Yeah, I appreciated how the report kind of summarizes it as an intact watershed. It's functional and very high functioning and don't disrupt it. There is comments in the sort of appendix parts further down above how they were not able to determine some aspects of the riparian canopy integrity. They would need LiDAR. And then as you go through this, there was also a forest management plan, I believe, set out by the NATCO for this area. So as a separate exercise, I'd be interested in seeing the forest management plan and if it included itself in LiDAR or detailed mapping, and if there are any cut blocks, and maybe the director, the area director Cunningham will know, was the forest management plan only high level? Or are there any proposed cut blocks whatsoever in that plan at this time for staff?
Thank you through the chair. There are no proposed cut blocks at this time, which is good, for the watershed. It is a high level, it is only at the high level stage at this point. And there has been no activity within the watershed itself, but up to.
Okay, anything further?
Yeah.
I'll take Director
You
Watson
can go,
first.
I mean, that's fine, I'll go after.
Okay, Director Cunningham.
Yeah, sure, with regards to the cut blocks, BC Timber Sales, when they first informed us that they wanted to log the watershed, had it divided into 3 sections, we said 1/3 of the watershed every seven years. Which meant in 21 years we'd have no watershed left. And that was totally unacceptable. The community, of course, rose up against this as well as, you know, talking to staff. And staff has done a lot of work here in this area. And basically, when we informed BC Timber Sales that in fact we couldn't use vehicles in the watershed because as soon as they did, they'd be disturbing the producing acid rock, okay? The acid in the rock would be released and destroy the watershed. They decided to give it up and give it to ATCO to do something with. And we talked to ATCO. We have a meeting scheduled with ATCO in the near future, the community test time. It's not a district, we're invited as a district, of course, but this basically the community is doing this thing. And to basically to flesh out what the next steps are. ATCO's been paying for the test on the water, both with regards to flow and the quantity and quality. And as was mentioned, the quality is excellent. The flow is sufficient at this time, but we have had years where it has not been sufficient. Basically, we've been down to, sorry, you guys, you know, the drip's coming out of the tap almost. So the system is well set up, as everybody knows. It's got a proper water treatment plant, level 4 treatment plant. So, but it's not built, and I think the report mentioned, it's not built to take chemicals or things like that out of the system. It is basically, you know, it filters down to nothing and it takes care of all the bugs and stuff and makes sure that it's acceptable to the health people. So that's where we are. The question is, and the thing, part of the report I think that we need to mention and really is what's the next steps. And really, I've been talking to our MLA and to one of the people who plans on running after I retire, who is presently working for the MLA. And hopefully we can get something out of them that says, listen, because the report does say, listen, just give something else to ATCO and said this and leave the watershed as it is. We have done the work, some of the stuff that Works wasn't mentioned, and there's the fact about taking under the lower canopy, right, and the bladder fuels and all, that's all been done. That has been done. And most of the watershed is very damp, even in you throw a barrel of gasoline and it wouldn't light. Even in the middle of summer, because it's very, very damp. It's the kind of watershed it is. There's a big sponge sitting on a pile of rock. And so it's been good for many, many years. And we've known since the beginning that it meant all of Canada's drinking water quality standards, not just some of them, all of them, every last one. And the only problem we ever did have was the fact that, you know, we were worried about things like bugs at various times, things like that in the water. So that's what we need to maintain. It's all what the report says. There's nothing really easily, you know, $300,000 a year if you want to bring it in by tanker truck. Well, thanks. That's not quite what we want to do. $600,000 if you wish to drill some wells and an alternate supply. Well, we have drilled wells. We know the alternate supply is very high in iron, which would require extensive treatment anyway. So we know where we are. Basically, we're in a selected watershed. When the water system was first put in, the new water system, the first one was 1893, but the new one was put in the early 80s. When that was done, the engineer said, now listen, this area in red is the community of Weimar. We can supply Weimar with water. And this was made before we talked about climate change much. Okay, in the foreseeable future, however, don't expand your red boundary because you will not. Right now, you can infill, you know, put all your houses in as this kind of thing. You can follow your community plan, all good, but don't expand the little red box. And it's worked well to date. The people of Weimar, we don't have meters, but we are using much less water in some of the metered communities that are around here without it. And I probably saw that with your.
So Director Cunningham, the premise of the report is, it obviously is not telling you anything new that you already don't know.
That's right.
And so we're still kind of exploring that next step.
The next step, and
opportunity.
the report does suggest the next step, which is take it, tell ATCO, thank you very much for your help, but goodbye. And let's get this is something we've been working on since whatever, the last 20 years, is talking about getting the province to say, okay, this is a secure watershed, it needs to be a watershed forever, so just let the community run it.
So I see
And the
strategic
first reading.
recommendations in that report that I can refer to, Director Watson.
Two questions. One is, does this get embedded as part of the asset management planning for the Weimar water system that we own? That's one of the questions. The second one is, and obviously I kind of did the executive summary and then the recommendations and didn't get to the in-between. But the note on the LiDAR missing, our NDMP projects acquired all the LiDAR. So was that not made available to them, or can they not access that for that level of assessment?
Please.
That's a really, through the chair, that's a good question. There was another forestry referral we had, and I asked the provincial staff if they had that LiDAR, which the province is holding through GOBC, and they hadn't heard of it. So I'm not really sure how forestry, I think they may, the LiDAR needs to be processed in a way that allows for them to see the forest, see the tree. So it requires some manipulation, and maybe that's what they refer to, but I'm assuming they have LiDAR because they do use LiDAR. From that conversation, I was told they do use LiDAR. So where they get it from, how they process it, I don't know.
Further?
Supplemental, so specific to this study, they indicated they were unable to do some assessment because they didn't have the LiDAR. So that's where I'm trying to connect the dots on, but the LiDAR is available, so they could have assessed it. I think that is a follow-up piece with whoever did the study to say, the LiDAR is available. If you don't have access to it, we need to follow up because that is publicly paid for data. If GOBC is holding it, that's fine. It's still publicly available data that is being requested by a very legit organization that we even have a tie to because we own the water system. I know that when we got that data, there was, we were wanting the Castle Community Forest to have access to it, and we got in trouble because they're a third party, it's not us. We still have a direct asset connection to this. So I would like to request that follow-up to ensure that LiDAR is being used. It was not cheap. So in cases like this is exactly where we need to be ensuring people that are there to assess it can assess it.
So staff is noting the opportunity to follow up on that LiDAR piece to see how it can enhance the report. And then we may see this down the road in terms of next steps. Anything further? I'm seeing none, so I'm going to move along to 8.1. And now we're going to get into the financial plan. New business. I think there's a.
Sure. Yeah, you may. I may. Thank you, through the chair. Okay, so I will be sharing my screen if I can figure out how to do that. This is mine. Even better. Oh.
Director Cunningham?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The financial plan the budget's being drawn up. I have a question. This is a theoretical one, and I think it's something we've talked about in general before. But I'd like to get more specific because we're just talking about the budget. As you know, we have some members of the regional district who have withdrawn from the service and choose not to participate anymore. We ran this kind of thing with planning many years ago. Except when something comes up that they're really interested in, we'd like to get back in. Or the question is, do we say, sorry guys, since you don't pay, you can't play? Is that where we are with this kind of thing in this budget?
Right. I'm hoping that staff will address that for us as we get into this, because I think that is a question that a few of us have wondered about. Please go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. So just to set context for us, this is our first budget of the year. I don't know if it's yours, but well, if it is, welcome to budget season, 3 months early. So, wonderful. Just another piece of the context is that this is coming to committee as a for information item right now and for discussion so that staff is able to hear any comments. So like last year when we did this, CSLAC came to me and said, you know what, given the current financial constraints, we want to remove the $25,000 grants that CSLAC offers to external organizations. So that would be the kind of discussion that we're hoping to hear from the directors. It might be discussions that might be also happening with relationship to the number of meetings that we have, director stipends, etc. So things that will influence the budget. We're then going to bring the budget back in December for final approval before going into the kind of full budget approval that the board is doing in December. So as a reminder in context to this, one of the things that has slightly shifted in so we're going to look at the budget and I'm going to highlight a few activities for it. This is for S105, so specifically for CSLAC. One of the changes, yep, that's correct. So one of the changes from the package that you did receive, I'm going to highlight, is we were waiting for confirmation from the province whether or not the service needed to reimburse the electoral area K for having stepped out as of the end, or as of, I think we figured out that it was March 2024, or the statement was from 2022 and then within 2 years, and then the continued participation.
Just for September 15th on the bond.
Yes, so September 15th.
I can't hear what you're saying when.
So the point where I'm trying to land is there was we were waiting for confirmation about whether or not we needed to reimburse $6,416 for when Area K stepped away. We received confirmation from the ministry that the committee does not need to. So the difference between the slides that you're seeing, because we only received confirmation late on Friday, is that the requisition will be $263,826, as opposed to what you'll see on one of your documents. You may have 270,000 and change, let's say. So this year's budget, the full budget is going to be $444,797. Within that, and I'm going to look at that on the next slide, there is an operational budget or an overhead budget that exists for CSLAC, and then there are project-specific budgets. So what we're looking at here is a rolled up look at what that budget is. So $444,797 will be the whole of the budget. Of that, there is $263,826 that comes from requisition. So that's up from $190,917. And this is where that reminder comes in that last year, the committee decided to remove the $25,000 grants that come out of CSLAC. So that's where one of the big differences comes in. There's also been an increase to salary and benefits for staff up to $191,575,000. And this current budget includes, waiting on committee comments, the $25,000 grants. And there are no LGCAP funds that come out of, or that are being requested this year for the CSLAC budget as a whole. So what we tried to do on this slide is—
Can I pause you? Any questions on that first slide? The only question I have is that on the requisition line, Area K 2025 credit to be confirmed, on your slide, you've got lines through that. What does that mean?
That is what I was trying to cumbersomely describe as having only been confirmed at the end of the day on Friday that the committee does not need to reimburse Area K for from the time where it was no longer participating to now.
Okay.
So that was the $6,416, and we confirmed that late on Friday. So now it's $263,826 only.
Thank you. Director Jackman.
Maybe this is a place to put it through the chair to Dan. You started to say what the differences were. For example, this anticipates $25,000. there's a lot bigger difference than 25, and there's a lot bigger difference than the few $1,000s of staff increases. So if that's all the public heard, then I think, wow, the staff got an extra $20 or something. There is one difference that's never adequately explained for us to hold in our memory as to what happened in the prior, say, 2 years. Because we like to dig holes using a surplus and then we jump out of the hole. And we may have dug $20,000 of a hole. And the flaw, and I don't know if you have some online or not, I didn't log on to it, but the flaw is the way we state prior year surplus. So, you know, it looked as though we were gonna have in 2024 $65,000 prior year surplus. We had 109,000. Well, why is that? Well, we did the project work done, or we didn't hire staff, we were holding money here. But anyway, we had a surplus, but it's not broken into the two important lines that we all have to understand when we're gonna make a decision on whether or not we want to back that big jump, that increase we saw, and where it comes from. And then we see from 2025 year budget, we had, anticipated $133,000 prior year surplus. Again, that's a big number. Is that work not done? We've seen delays, and then of course delays generally tend to cost an organization money because of added staff time to hold everybody's hand and make sure the work does get done. Or again, is that prior year surplus not grant money that's being punted ahead another year, but is that money that we then took money out of and dug a hole in our requisition to roll the requisition back? Because we did, we rolled the requisition back $20,000 between 2024 and 2025. So it's always nice to know what is that prior year surplus comprised of? Where did it go to offset requisition? Or did it go back into the budget to pay for the work that we planned to do and didn't get done? So I'm assuming in that difference column, there's 20,000 who dug a hole saying, hey, we somehow accumulated a surplus. We're not gonna tax enough to cover our base costs, which are staff, ongoing projects, general and whatever. But it'd be sure nice to see that breakdown with the prior year surplus was, because it's important. It's a big chunk of this $70,000 jump, maybe $20,000.
Dan, good job, thank you. And I try to address part of it into the next slide, where I'm describing where the prior surplus is being broken down. And you're right, there are parts of the prior year surplus that are connected specifically to grants that are being rolled over in a project. So the way that the organization, so if we receive a grant on, let's say in 2024, that is for a specific project, if that money is unspent in that year, this is just a reminder for myself and expressing it to the committee. If that money is unspent, it then goes into a prior year surplus, moving into the future, moving forward into the next year, and it's still connected to that work, but it's identified as a prior year surplus. So what I've tried to do in this particular slide that's currently being shared is to break down how that prior year surplus, that's a whopping $171,000, how it actually breaks down. So in the three right-hand columns of the Kootenay Lake Partnership, Slocan Lake and River Partnership, and the Watershed Security Project, those are all grant-specific funds that were rolled over into the 2026 budget. Whereas the $5,443 is a prior year surplus that came out of the Weimar Natural Asset Management Project that was held as an admin fee. So that one's coming forward as essentially like cash to balance out time that was spent on the projects. Whereas the other ones are all grant specific and connected expenses within that specific project.
So, Chair, the understanding is that year before we dug a $20,000 hole, with a similar analysis, and we got to remember that we taxed 20,000 less than we might have normally, because we said, hey, we got cash on hand, like that 5,443. Just understand, we dug ourselves a little hole in the service, and that's a third of what we're trying to make up for.
Right.
But we didn't get this detail last year, quite a little thing.
It was, thank you.
So good.
Director Watson.
And can you add Director Graham to the list? My question is, and I'm gonna ask Geoff this because he is online, is we face this in many of our budgets where we put something under prior year surplus that is not a surplus, it's allocated.
Mhm.
What I'd like to know, because we do this in our rec services, especially with contribution services, where we're like, wait, is that actually available? No, it's not available. Can you remember what they asked for? So I'd like to ask if it's okay with you through to the chair to CFO Meloff, can we not identify these in our budgets as allocated surplus or a different way of saying this is not a surplus?
Reasonable request, that would have to ask staff to communicate with, Yeb. Yeb.
Yeah,
sure,
not-
sure.
yeah.
Well, hello, Yeb, welcome.
Good
Question is-
afternoon, Chair. Yeah, through the chair, it's a valid question. The prior surplus, as Dan's table lays out, is made up of various items, and that's something we certainly will consider or should consider is breaking that out, so it's better identified of what that surplus is.
Supplemental.
So supplemental, if like I want to actually not call it a surplus. It's not a surplus. I want to note it as allocated, and in that sense, and thank you, Yev, if we can look at that across our services, so because you'll hear this question repeated every budget meeting we have. In that sense, in this specific budget that's been presented, the only actual surplus available is zero, because the admin fees are technically staff costs. KLP is actually a grant we're hosting or holding. Slocan Lake, similar. And Yakima Watershed, that's not a surplus in any way, that's actually allocated. So these are all allocated funds. There is no surplus whatsoever. So I would just, until we actually change it in our budgets to not be noted as prior year surplus, but allocated grants or whatever you want to call it, the next iteration of this, I'd say, is there's zero surplus. I believe that's what we're actually saying.
And that includes the 5443. But you touched on that as,
So through the chair, what Director Watson was describing is it's money that's essentially balancing out staff time that took place for that project. So what I think I'm understanding is that it's not specifically a surplus from unspent money, let's say, based on budgeting and actuals from the previous year. And right now, where there's a zero surplus, is that we're tracking our expenses to be accurate to what the budget is. It's a little bit trickier now that we're doing it 3 months earlier than we usually do. So, but right now it's tracking to meet what the budget is. And that the other ones, we have different language that's called grant specified. We do have an account that's called grant specified, although when we carry funds forward from one year to the next, it moves from a grant specified into a surplus into the following year. So what I'm hearing talk about is that they're going to look into that.
okay, well, clearly though, Director Watson is saying that ought to be changed to it's allocated. It's not a surplus. It is already earmarked or something.
Yeah, but it's still unmuted. I'm not sure I wanted to add to that.
Yeah, did you wish to?
Through a chair, no, that's what all I had to say.
Okay, Director Watson, anything further?
No, I think that's.
Director Graham?
Yeah.
Thank you. So through the chair, my question is around the Kootenay Lake Partnership, and I understand it's grants that we're holding for the Kootenay Lake Partnership. So like grants from who and grants for what and for what period of time?
Thank you. Through the chair, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I can speak to it. So through the chair, the grants are from various funders: Columbia Power Corporation, BC Hydro, Fortis BC, Real Estate Foundation, Tech, and some City of Nelson. Also, the regional district contributed some money, although I believe that's all been spent. So they're from various funders. The only one that we have a time limit on, but we can get an extension for, is the Real Estate Foundation Fund. And our coordinator has been in touch with the Real Estate Foundation to get an extension for spending of that grant. Right now, the Kootenay Lake Partnership is going through a process of looking at the future and the strategy on of how we spend that money. And so, because there's been some changes in, where the group wants to go, we're working through those details, but we hope to have that, discussion completed and move forward with, preparing a new version of our shoreline guidance document, which is ultimately what we want to create.
Okay.
Supplemental, Director Graham? Good to go. Director Cunningham, did I see your hand up?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, please carry on. Anything further from the group? None? Dan, you have more to say?
I think the only parts that I would highlight are, because if this committee is looking to reduce requisition or adjust requisition, I wanted to make sure that you saw things that were more flexible. So things like the director stipends and mileage, and that's specifically connected to the number of meetings that we choose to have throughout the year. And then the second one is the grants that are provided by CSLAC, which historically have created excellent projects that have been incubators for larger projects that have come out of CSLAC. Last year, the committee chose not to have those grants, but they are highlighted and broken out as other expenses in case those are for discussion. And then the other three projects, there's one project that doesn't show here, and it's the NAM project, which was $80,000. So that's not shown here. That's one of the differences that you're seeing from a contracted services standpoint from previous year to last year, or from last year to this year as well. And that's it. Otherwise, it's questions. And there's also the budget that was shared as a whole, and I can walk through different parts of that. If there are questions on the budget specifically, I hope the notes came out clearly enough in that one to try to explain anything, but I'm happy to speak to any parts of that budget.
All right, Watson, Cunningham, and Graham.
I'm just curious, so when you do, and maybe this is where I'm using the grasp on the prior surplus not being surplus, but the difference between if we do the 25,000 grant this year and the 11,000 in increased staff expenses, there's still a $40,000 difference in requisition. So what is that going to?
So please, through the chair. I don't know if that's going to be big enough here. So I pulled up on, I tried to pull up just as large as I could here. So the more significant shifts that are happening are around, excuse me, salary and benefits, the CSLAC grant, and we've got WGI work that's being carried forward through GIS of $30,800. So that essentially makes up the bulk of the difference between the 2 years.
Supplemental?
Yes, please.
So the GIS work it doesn't, I mean, in this chart, it says there's no GIS work, so maybe that's the missing piece to yes.
And because it's not connected to the LGCAP, I didn't want to confuse that we were asking for LGCAP, and you're right, I could have probably added an extra line that highlighted that to highlight it. Oops, sorry. I realized my screen's not sure.
And can I ask what the GIS work is then? That work, is this the review process? And why would CSAC be paying for that? Okay, thanks. And what is it then?
Through the chair?
Yep.
The GIS work. So about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when we were doing all our data development, we allocated 45,000 of LGCAP funding to GIS to do work that we anticipated doing. We've spent that a little bit each year, and what remains is the 30,000. So it was part of a grant that we approved for the GIS work. We're now using it to develop GIS materials for the Goat River watershed. We anticipate updating the story mapping and doing more story maps as that develops some interest. So whatever GIS related work is attached to the WGI, that's that pocket part.
So sorry, then that's not requisition and that's grants, which means there's still a 40,000 gap in why the requisition is going up. That 40,000 gap is still there. Paris is indicating that the GIF money that you've indicated is actually grant funding, so it's not taxation. And it wouldn't be in 2026 if it was taxation, because we allocated it several years ago. Sorry. So we still have a $40,000 question. Where is that money? What's it
Director
for?
Cunningham.
Yes, thank you. It was mentioned that was the Weimer, water thing was $80,000 that I contributed out of my works fund. And I assume that's what makes the budget for next year so high, because we have not yet deducted that. Because normally requisitions, of course, refer to taxation, direct taxation. And I don't mind the 80,000 done, Don, we've got our value for it, there's no problem with that. But I'd like to know exactly, are we looking at an increased budget and increased taxation next year? That's, I think, the end result, because I hate to say it, the way it looks right now, is some of the people who have spoken to us about budgets and past, look at that, said, oh my God, you've got a 30% increase in your budget for next year, because you look at the requisition amount. I
Okay,
don't
so
want that to happen. You know what I mean?
the 80,000, is that accounted for in some capacity, or is that
Yeah.
a side item?
Through the chair, the $80,000 in terms of income or expenses does not show up anywhere in this budget because the project is complete. All the expenses will have been paid for, all the income will have been received by them.
Supplemental?
If I may, yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, in other words, where it says 2026 budget, it says requisitions. I would like that budget. Is it possible to make it so it doesn't look like it's a 30%? I know it's paid for. I'm not questioning the facts. I'm questioning the fact that when somebody who doesn't know about budgets and how these things are done looks at that and says, there's a 30% increase in budget for next year. Of course, there isn't. And I want to make sure that becomes well known.
All right, comment is well taken. Director Graham? No, passing at this time. Director Jackman?
Yeah, thanks. So back to the 40,000 gap. Part of it was we dug a hole the year before by taxing 19,000 less. More than that, and we should have. We cobbled up, if you look at what we taxed in 2024, we taxed 210,000 and change. Then we dropped to 190.9. And I'm sure if we did Dan's analysis a year back, we would have had ongoing committed money that looked like a surplus. That we said, okay, we can't touch it. Then we would have had other money that happened to be, for whatever reason, a bit of a surplus. We didn't hire somebody as soon as we thought, or we didn't spend something on something else. So we sucked that surplus up and we dropped taxation 20,000 and dug a hole. So part of the 40 gap is we're digging out of that hole, plus inflation for 2 years. That's part of the hole. We dug that hole. We do it all the time. We love to do it. We take what is apparently not allocated and we just bought back taxes. We're gonna do it again, so I'm not surprised. The other part of it, about 8,000 of it, is for wages, between salaries and benefits. There's another 1,000, so we'll call it 9, for employee health and safety. You could question that. You look at all the rest, I've got a bunch of 5-year averages in front of me here, so exactly what we asked for, so that's not the reason. So there's 9,000 maybe in employee salaries. $20,000, a little more if you include inflation on us digging a hole of taxation prior year. And then the others I would expect, if you were to really analyze this consulting and contracted amounts, we're probably projecting we're spending a little higher than we hoped to previously. To do that, we'd have to wonder, what was the cost of consultation? What was the cost of this? How many meetings are we gonna hold? 6 times we're gonna meet in community to talk about this or to talk about that. We've got all kinds of calendar units. So the 40, half of it is we dug that hole. Half of the remainder is staff allocated costs. The other half is the last 10,000 is a lot of little things. But this is where we get more careful when we talk about a surplus and understand when we burn up a parent surplus, we do the hole. And as I say, we'll be doing this in a few months, digging some holes. So it doesn't really bother me. It's just we need better information. This year, great information. Previous years, you may not have understood that we're digging a hole. Maybe we did.
Paris is ahead of you first, Dan. Sorry.
Just through the chair, what we can do, so what I hear is there is a benefit in helping break down that surplus and getting clarity around that, and we can bring that forward next time. I'm also hearing that there is clarification on the 30,800 that Director Watson is asking about, so we can bring all that back in December with more clarity.
Sure, the 30 is in-out, it's
Yeah.
not part of the equation, it comes into the revenues and it goes out as an expense, it's not part of this discussion, it's in and out receivables funds.
Understood by staff. Paris.
I think if I can, thank you through the chair. What might be a fair starting place of understanding the 2026 budget is that really we're starting at a 210 budget, which is more in line with 2023, and that it changed. And so,
Yes.
so we're looking at the increase from 190, but really we should be looking at an increase from 220, 210.
Well, and I happen to have that here, because I
And then it
anticipated
doesn't
the
look-
question. So it looks like a 38%, but it's still a 20% increase when it comes down to it. So there, and I'm sorry, I don't have commas and stuff. I just did that quickly.
Okay, Director Watson.
Yeah, still not adding it. For me, the only thing we did not tax for last year that was a drop was the 25,000 grant. So the 41,000 that's different in requisition is not, from my understanding, a surplus that we didn't tax for. I don't know where the 2 tons coming from. The only thing we did not tax for was the grant, which was 25,000. So when you take the difference in requisition, which is around 80,000 for 2026, you remove the 25,000, you remove the 11,000 for the staff increases, there's a $41,000 difference. So what is that $41,000 difference? It shouldn't be covering a surplus that we used last year, because all of that surplus is allocated. It's not a surplus. It was allocated. So the only difference is a $25,000 difference. And so why do we have a $41,000 increase when we've already included in these numbers the $25,000 for the grant? That is in there.
Did you want to, Dan? I'm just wondering if Yev is listening as well, but go ahead,
Sure.
Dan.
Through the chair, what I will bring back in December, what I would like to bring back is a comparison between, like, the difference here is actuals versus budgeted from, and there, I think Director Jackman is highlighting it in the way that I'd like to present it for December, as well as the difference between actuals and budgeted from 24 to 25, and the difference between actuals and budgeted from 25 to 26, which, and itemized so that there's an understanding of what we're carrying forward as actual surpluses. Because I think, to Director Jackman's point, last year from 24 to 25, there was an amount that was carried forward as a larger surplus than it ended up being in the actuals, which reduced the actual amount that was being brought forward. So to Director Jackman's words, I think we dug ourselves into a hole, and that's what I'd like to be able to actually just show in a spreadsheet so that there's an understanding of it.
So the best way for me to get that, because I'd rather, like, what you have on the screen right now
Yeah.
is where I want to see those numbers. Because I think if that's the case, then it's just the way it's being presented that's messing me up.
Okay.
Because I'm getting a $41,000 increase with no, where does that land? What is that for?
Mhm.
So this helps. This presentation helps.
Okay.
Because then I can compare each line item 25 to 26.
And there might be part of it in that 40 grand, because it's actually just like 10-ish grand, but the 30,800 is the part that I'll just highlight up here that's it's not going through taxation here. So 30,000 that's coming in, and then 30,000 that's going out, and that's not going through requisition.
I'm only referencing requisition differences.
Okay.
I'm referencing the difference between 190 to 263.
Okay,
And allocating what is that 80,000 difference? I can do the 25,000 grant, I can do the staff increases, where's the $41,000 difference?
okay.
All right, Cunningham first, and then Jackman.
Yes, and my concern, of course, is not only about the amount of the budget and increases, but the fact is we've got fewer payers this time, which means that we need to be paying more respectively. So if the budget remains the same as last year, we're still gonna be paying more.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to see, please, if we could, when we get this thing, see what the effect is upon each area of the budget increase. I'd really like to see that for next year. Because I'd like to know what I paid last year, I can look that up. But I'd also like to see what I'm going to be paying next year. Because I think that's the thing that our taxpayers really look at when they say, well, you paid this much, last year, and now you're paying this much this year, and what are we gonna get for it? And, I have to be able to answer those kinds of questions.
All right, so just a reminder, we're having this discussion so that we can communicate our thoughts and our input to a budget that will continue to come to us. Director Jackman.
If I can answer through the chair, Director Watson, a good observation about the 25 is in and out and in. However, 2024, we taxed for $25,000 in giveaway grants. We only gave away 6.5. So whether it's an $18,500, $18,000 real cash spendable money that we taxed in 2024 and we burned in 2025 in order to keep the requisition lower artificially last year. So it's a much bigger, you gotta go back years and see our practice. It was, we thought we were gonna spend 25 and we didn't, and we took that cash and we used it to reduce requisition in 2025. That's 18,500 of the 19-some thousand. And I'm certain all the rest would have been little tidbits of money. We didn't average multi-years, we just said, suck all that money in and reduce requisition. Instead of inflating your requisition to match the reality of real costs of the day. So we could have put that into a stabilization fund or done something else. We didn't. We took the whole 25,000, the amount we didn't spend 18.5, just trashed the requisition, which confuses the heck out of our constituents because they see it go way back up. So we are good at stabilization funds in, say, building inspection and some other things. So we have a seesaw type service like this is, where a lot happens and little happens. A lot of promises doesn't get done, it's delayed. Maybe we gotta be careful with our parent cash surplus and do something in terms of a stabilization fund. Or we just live with it. Like I said earlier, that's what we did. We cashed in some money, dropped the requisition, we looked good last year, next year will look really bad. But that's a big part.
All right, Director Watson.
Yeah, not on that one, and I'm following you. Okay. What I would like to know is back to Director Cunningham's point, which I can't believe I forgot, but requisition, how it's landing by area, given we have less membership, when do we see that? Because that is gonna be a bigger impact to an increase that isn't really, it's gonna be an increase on the ground, it's not an increase in actual servicing. So that's where I believe we received a summary of your survey in June, but we didn't really discuss it. And I feel like that's the bigger conversation here, is how are we handling that financially? So when I'd say that that's a pretty urgent conversation to have. So can I anticipate that's December and we'll see some numbers as well as, you know, I think that's gonna impact what we end up doing with that $25,000 grant, frankly, because that's our only discretion at this time.
All right. So the only comment I would add to this is that when I look at the financials, mine are dated S-105. Which is, do you want to respond to that? Is it possible? Sure, you can, sure. Yeah, you gotta wait your turn.
I will. Okay, go ahead. Thank you through the chair. I anticipated that question. What's challenging in that is that we don't have this year's assessment. So whatever I show you next is a draft of a draft of a draft of an idea. So this is what it ends up looking like from a 2025. And I share this as just a discussion point for this group and as an awareness. So moving from 190,000 in 2025, bigger, yeah. 190,000 in 2025, thank you. 2026 moving to 263,826. The difference is that Area K has now been removed. And so Area K being removed, which shifts what the allocations are for each area from 2025 to 2026 based on 2025 assessments. So this is not real, this is just for discussion. Those are gonna go up or down, which we can't speak to. Yes, the slice of the pie is the same, there's the same. Oh, for each area, yeah, it'll proportionally be the same.
All right, go ahead, please.
Thank you for sharing this, Dan. And I know, I totally know, even with the, earlier budget conversations, we're dealing with a lot of pieces, so I wouldn't anticipate, we generally don't know assessment till, for lucky, but March forward. So I appreciate that you did this on last year's assessment. What I'm gonna flag is as we move forward, already we're looking at, yes, it's the same proportion in terms of we're all paying by assessment, but we are increasing what we're paying at this time. Let's just estimate 40% increase by area, roughly, because K is out, which is, I'm not picking on K in any way. I'm not gonna pick on J in any way. You made your call, that's cool. But I do think what we're looking at is an unsustainable service called sustainability. And we need to talk seriously about how we either move this to general admin, because nothing we're doing here is specific to the service participants. We just happen to be the ones still hanging on. And that's not fair to our residents. Or what else we do. I think that conversation needs to happen sooner than later, because that's a tricky conversation. I would definitely recommend, from a corporate level, there's corporate involvement in that. Just anticipating that, at this point, when we get to 2026, I might be sorry, jumping ship, because I can't do that to my residents from a fair equity perspective, not from a I don't believe in what we're doing perspective.
All right, did you want to respond to that before I go to Director May?
Yes, please.
Please
Through the
go to
chair.
Director May, or will you like?
No, I'd like to respond.
All
Thank
right.
you. Hurt.
Oh, I thought you said heard.
Yeah, okay. Agreed. So the way that staff thought about it for this year, and also speaking with CAO Horn, is that might be a discussion for 2026 for the service. So directors are going to have that conversation of what you do with those projects, because as you can see, when you start removing other areas, it does shift how much weight is on the current participants. For this specific year, with one area out, you might still be in the range of where you want to land. So that's why we were just presenting the budgetary the numbers, and not saying, here's where the programs are, here's what the projects are, where do you want to put them?
I throw a wild card in there and decline answering if you'd like.
What's that?
Decline answering.
I'd like to throw in a wild card.
Yeah, that'd be supplemental, absolutely.
Okay. So similar to what we did with KVFA and Central Kootenai Pulp. What they drop?
County.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, regardless, we made motions at this table that directed that to general admin. We just started moving project to general admin. I'm not saying that's best practice, but I'm saying that is to my committee members. Staffing wise, staffing is not sustainability predominantly. It is spread across, and I think that alone could move into general admin. Just saying. I'll leave it there. That's not, I guess, this rhetorical question.
Well, the conversation is, and I had noted here, future survey work and suggestions. There's a lot that's wrapped up in there. And that is an important conversation that we need to have before we can feel comfortable talking this budget moving forward, particularly for the future, as it's being painted very clearly today. So I heard you correctly when Stuart Horn said we ought to just work this through for 2026. What I was hoping that you weren't going to say is that we'll deal with it in 2026, because I don't think that is a 2026 opportunity. The opportunity to see where we sit in the future is really now, the next time we get together. I am going to go to Director. Are you anything supplemental before I go to Cunningham?
Okay.
Cunningham?
Thank you. Yes, one quick remark, and I think we're all aware of this. 26, of course, is an election year. And for those of you who plan on staying here for future, it's really nice if we have a nice true budget rather than something that shows something like a 20 or 30% increase. I won't be here in the future, so I'll just be sitting back with a smile, because I know how tough it is, and I mean, after all, I haven't been here, I know how tough it is to make budgets balance, and I know that our people want services, and I know that they just don't want to pay for them, unfortunately. And and some of it gets stuck with things like, whoops, I got a couple of new houses in town, and my requisition almost doubles because of the fact everybody else gets assessed more. Those kinds of things all come to play. But, if it's an election year, we owe it to our people to try and trim it and make it as nice and neat and easy to understand as possible. And I just suggest we keep that in the back of our minds.
All right, Director May.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. I absolutely agree with, Director Watson that we have some existential questions about this service that need to be discussed and need to be discussed sooner rather than later to respond to your comment, Chair. I've been raising this for a few years now, and other directors have commented on it as well, that sustainability as a separate service, we're losing members over the years. Silverton has indicated that unless everybody's in, Silverton will want to get out. And I think that the appropriate solution to it is to make it a general administration item, because we do benefit every single region of this regional district, all the rural and the municipal directors derive benefit from the work we do, and they should all be in. No choice, no ask, pretty please, everybody's in. Because the work we do benefits everybody. And it's really easy for municipal councils and our constituents to point to sustainability and say, why are you doing that? Why do you have that service? What does that do? It is in general administration, it's just part of the work we do. Everybody's in, everybody benefits, and that's my position on it. But I think we need to workshop it with the rest of the directors who aren't here today because they're not in the service.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other speakers on the list. Before I wrap this up, this has been, would you agree, lively and robust conversation? Isn't that what you're after?
Yes.
You may close.
Well, I didn't hear any comments around the $25,000. I didn't hear any comments around different guidance around number of meetings or shifting director stipends as a result of that. Can I assume from that when I bring you back the draft budget or the final draft budget in December, that you're okay with seeing the $25,000 in there and the director stipends as they are currently listed in the budget?
Okay, so Director Susan, you would?
I'll go out on a limb and I actually favor removing the 25,000. Because we're gonna go shopping for a project to put the money to rather than having a clear project identifying which we will apply the money to. We would put a call out, you know, because I haven't seen anything in the agenda that says that there's a project identified that we could get behind as a group of directors.
All right. So I would comment as well that, to your point, I'm actually in agreement with Director Hewitt on that one. But as I go through the survey and all the comments and the opportunities that go there, the questions you're asking is really a part of that discussion, which we're still waiting to have, because it's not just about specific small items. It's about a bigger conversation and what that can look like. And to Director Watson's point, I mean, maybe this needs to be folded elsewhere, sort of thing. But until we have that conversation or the workshop, if you will, it's really hard to nail that down. Director Watson.
I would agree with Director Hewitt due to the fact that our requisitions are going to increase on a by area anyways, and we already know that if, you know, we're speaking to our residents and cost of living right now, it's not something we can do. So I would support it, but the difficulty is that I'm not supporting it because I don't think we do good work with it. I'm supporting it because of everything else we have to consider. And what I would add is, by all means, if you want to direct that grant to general admin for sustainability purposes, I'd go for that and then see where it all lands. But that is, you know, that's a wild card to the board that might initiate the board saying, well, maybe we need to workshop this and talk about it. We'll be like, yes, we do. At this moment, though, based on what we're looking at and all of that, I do support not doing it this year. And really, we have so much on our plate, so I'll stop there. And I have to go at 3. I'm so sorry.
Okay,
I have another meeting.
I think Director Main, there's no one ahead of you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm going to, partly agree with what was said before. I would be prepared to vote to take the 25,000 out this year with the caveat that I said the same thing last year. I'm only agreeing to it for this year, not that it become an item that is permanently removed from our budgeting, from our aspirations. And I think part of the reason we don't have emerging projects right now is because all of the directors sitting here knew that we had deleted that $25,000 that could be put to a new project. I don't think there's any lack of viable, valuable projects. I think that as directors, we've gone, we don't have any 25. Let's wait and see. But those projects do exist. I'd support removing it because the budgetary pressures and the financial pressures of here and in our hometowns are just huge. So
Thank you. We're still on our closing. Sangeeta.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick on 2 points. One, Leah, about the workshop. It is something I will talk to Stuart about and also discuss it with the team. It may help to air some of those issues that you have, but Director Watson just provided another third option for the 25,000, which I noted is it could be moved if you chose to general admin. So that is another option for that money. It would not be in this budget, but it would be available for projects. Again, we need to workshop all of this.
All right. I'm looking around the room. I see no hands up on the TV. I am going to. No, we're saying no to it. All of you. Yeah, 25. Yeah,
That's what I'm
and
hearing.
it sounds like the
Direction to staff to remove
future
25.
conversation of where we're going is really important to have.
Do you want a motion on that?
Do you,
Last year we did.
does staff want a motion on it?
Last year we did do that. We had a resolution.
Yeah, and through the chair, it could happen now or it could happen when we bring the full budget forward.
I think that's the
We'll
time.
put that on the list.
So in the draft, what I'll do, so what I'm proposing is that in the draft, what I'll do is I'll take out the 25,000 so that you're gonna see with clarity what that requisition is looking like, and then you can vote to it and then have that resolution that comes forward with it as well, that says remove it from the official, from the budget for 2025, or sorry, 6, whoa, in the future.
Yeah.
Amy, does that sound right?
I think that that's because the question really was from Dan, do you want me to include it or not? And that's what the discussion is. And so we're not approving a budget at this time. That would be the point to make a motion.
Okay.
So I think we're okay. I was just making sure those that didn't speak were okay with that, I guess.
Susan, did you have something further to say? I thought I saw some movement there.
No, I'm just listening
All
to
right.
see what the direction was. I would make the motion if it was necessary, but sounds like it's not, so.
Okay, staff in a good place? All right. Thank you. We are now moving on to 8.2 for discussion. Approval to apply for watershed security funding, foreshore inventory mapping. And Paris, you're on that list. Or noted.
Thank you, through the chair. So we had a successful meeting with the Silcan Lake and River Steering Committee, where there was representation from SNIKES, representation from SILKS, representation from the stewardship groups, and then staff from the RDCK. The terms of reference were approved as they are, and they'll be brought forward to CSLAC in December. But given the timeliness of this particular grant, we wanted to ensure that it was on the agenda for discussion and consideration by CSLAC. One of the first projects that SLRP would like to undertake is doing foreshore inventory mapping on the river. It's already been done on the lake. Also doing cultural assessments and archaeological review on both the lake and the river in preparation of preparing shoreline guidance documents. This has already been done on Kootenay Lake and is being updated as Director or Manager Sudan referred to earlier. And so there's a funding opportunity available that seems like a good fit. We applied for the same fund to do the work in the Goat River watershed. And we're requesting direction from CSLAC to apply for up to 150,000 to do this mapping work and inventory work on the Slocan River.
Okay. Questions, Dr. Hewitt, Director Hewitt?
So through the chair, if I understand the report correctly, it's 100% grant funded except for the staff time that would be required. I don't see any other monetary figures in there. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yes, through the chair. Yes, that's correct.
All right, I thought I saw another hand, Cunningham.
Yeah, can we do it for that amount that's suggested, I mean, I've read it, so forth, but things like this have gone overboard. Oh, well, we still have to do 25%, just, okay.
Thank you through the chair. Yes, we also have a commitment from Silks, so Okanagan Nation Alliance, but if there's any outstanding funding, first of all, they're able to do much of the work, which is quite exciting. But also if there's any outstanding funding, they have funding that they can access as well.
Good.
Director Main.
Hearing those questions and responses, I would be prepared to move the recommendation.
Okay, the recommendation is written, seconded over here. Discussion, Director Watson.
Just noting that we have asked, and this is at the board table, so I'm gonna repeat it here, that when we do things that are 100% grant funded, but there's staff time included, that is not 100% grant funded, and I'd like to see the staff time broken out, especially in this service where we are, well, I guess Agent, well, Slocan's not in this, Silverton is in Denver, well, two more, but basically just stating that it's important for us to understand the staff time.
Okay, Director Jackman, I can tell just by looking at you that you're gonna put your hand up.
Already, I did have my hand up earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, the report says 20 to 30 hours of staff time. That's assuming this is done on time. And as I think I said earlier, a lot of these projects take an extra year or two, like 450 hours, but that should be equated to $1.
Yes.
$1,000, $2,000. The other point in the report that I was curious as to what it meant, whether it's a Slocan River and Lake thing, or if it's a different thing under the risks, is a governance risk. It's a second risks. There's a risk, there's three sections with risks. We shouldn't have moved to the other one. Governance, okay, risks with alternative solution, which is not do this. To not do this undermines the Slocan Lake and River group's credibility and Indigenous co-governance commitments. So I don't understand that statement. Has the Slocan group made an Indigenous co-governance commitment? Or is that a risk to us because we've made a co-governance commitment with Indigenous nations? What that is.
Thank you through the chair. Could you please highlight which page it is on?
On this
thank you.
particular
Yeah.
report, it's page 4 or 5, there's risks 3 times, so under 5.2.
Right.
Risks with the alternative solution or solutions under governance.
Yes.
Undermines SLRP's credibility, separate thing, and Indigenous co-governance commitments. So is that an SLRP co-governance commitment? Or is the N referring to our risk? We have a co-governance commitment on this certain project.
Thank you through the chair. And the language might be a bit strong. So it's to not apply for funding, really to not proceed with an action that's supported by the partnership at this time. Which is, yeah, the partnership has been a long time in making. It's 2.5 years. And so there's a lot of interest to see it go ahead. And it is co-governance of the partnership itself. So we're looking, so the partnership is a partnership with Silks and Sinaiks. And so, yeah, it's that agreement and that partnership that it could potentially be undermined.
If I could ask to clarify then, Kootenay Lake Partnership, we signed the terms of reference way back when. Some people might have signed it aren't around anymore because the ministries are busy not paying attention to Kootenay Lake Partnership. So is there terms of reference signed with Sinaik and the Silks and the regional district and this Slocan group that has full governance commitments in it? Is that where it is? It's a signed document.
Thank you through the chair. That is coming to the regional district in December.
So there's no risk because there's no commitment, but it's aspirations.
It's aspirational. We do have thumbs up, which is not a signatory, but it's definitely a level of agreement by the committee on the terms of reference to date. So there's an oral commitment, not from us, because it hasn't been brought to CSAC.
Did I not hear you say that terms of reference is complete?
So at our last meeting, we brought the latest draft of the terms of reference. There was representatives there from Snipes, there was representatives there from Silks, there was representatives there from the stewardship committee. We were there as staff. We clearly stated that we were there as staff and we needed to bring it back to CSAC for formal approval, but they were able to give sign off from their levels of authority pending our level of authority.
Okay, Sangeeta.
Yeah, and through the chair, just to emphasize, Director Popoff, I was good, probably wasn't for a minute, Walter. Director Popoff was at that meeting and has been supportive of that co-governance model.
So it's aspiration, not commitments. There's no risk because there's no commitment.
Yes.
It's an aspiration. Look forward to reading what it says because it could apply to sort of things.
Agreed. All right. Anything further? I guess my input is that until we have a terms of reference, I am reluctant to support this. Because I think that's important. And that's just a knee-jerk reaction based on the conversations I'm hearing. So, anything further from looking up, looking around?
Just a
Director
question.
Main?
If we fail to approve this now, have we run out of timeline on it? Or will we have further opportunity?
Thank you through the chair. The deadline is November 17th, and so we wouldn't be able to apply, and the next round isn't until the following next fall. I would say that if there's any concerns with the terms of reference when it comes to discussion in December, there's always an opportunity for us to withdraw and pursue other funding sources.
As I'm thinking this through, Paris, how is this similar to the Goat River watershed work that we're doing? To me, this is not the same. How am I wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. No, through the chair. You are correct that it's not the same. It is a partnership. It is working together in some structure of co-management, co-governance with First Nations. It's more aligned with KLP, the Kootenay Lake Partnership, than it is with the work that's happening in the Goat River.
Okay. And I guess once again, until I know that there's a terms of reference and understand that piece, which is an important piece, that's how we communicate, that's how we work together, that's what we do in the event that we don't agree. This one doesn't strike me very well. Sangeeta.
The terms of reference was approved by the partnership at the last meeting, and Paris will bring it forward next meeting. But based on what the timeline is for the grant, if staff were given direction to apply, then if the terms of reference is not approved by the board and the project doesn't go forward, we can then withdraw our application. But just getting direction to apply for the grant and moving that piece forward, because the next intake will be next year in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes it a little bit better for me, Papa.
Yeah, just to expand on that, we did have that meeting here just in October, and we had all the participants there at that meeting. And the terms of reference were accepted. Now, what was mentioned is they have to go back to the First Nations or whatever to make sure that it works okay for them. So all we have to do, like, we're gonna miss an opportunity for the grant here. We don't move forward on this issue. And if there's a problem with the terms of reference, which I don't foresee happening because, excuse me, all the players that were supposed to be there were there. And we all agreed on the terms of reference. It's a matter of just process making it happen.
Understood. Anything further before I call the question? I believe it was motioned and seconded, was it not?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Yes.
I have one, request coming further to that project, which is that if, local government is being included in those meetings, please include me. I am representing Spokane Lake. Absent the other two municipalities on the lake, I really would like to be present. Thank you.
Staff noted. All right, we're now into public time. I am going to now turn to the screen and we have no one in the room. And we have a person identified as Bob and as user. Please feel free to unmute your mics and ask this committee any question that comes to mind. I am seeing no response. Calling the second time. And for the third time. Thank you very much. Good session. Our next meeting is December 9th of this year. Yes.
I think it's a point of order, I'm not sure. In the e-scribe, there's an in-camera CSLAC meeting. Is that a mistake, or are we having an in-camera CSLAC meeting, in which case we have to adjourn this and do all of that stuff?
I don't believe you can even open it up. I think it's a placeholder if I'm correct, right?
We thought we had an in-camera conversation to have, and we did not. That might have been a mistake to not.
We've been speculating.
I know. Sorry. Where's that agenda? So sorry. Thank you for that.
So exciting. I wonder what you.
Yeah.
What were you imagining?
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
I move we adjourn.
Okay.
Yeah, yes,